accident and emergency. I'm not saying libraries are in accident and emergency. This is about clarity of priorities and who libraries are for. So this is a picture of accident and emergency, an A&E department in London. I have a 2-year-old daughter, which means that not that often, but once so far, I found myself in accident and emergency at about 10 o'clock at night with my daughter clutching her elbow. When 2-year-olds hang on to an adult like that and want to be swung around, you can end up with something called pulled elbow. It's very nasty and very scary, and as a parent you think you're probably going to end up on a list with social services for doing it. So lesson 1, when 2-year-olds want to hang on your arm, even however much fun it looks like it's going to be, don't do it. But I was sat there with my daughter in accident and emergency. We'd signed in, we'd written, filled out all the forms saying that we really were from this country and all this kind of stuff and data protection and all that. And I was immediately struck. I mean, I've been in hospitals before, but I was immediately struck, this is kind of quite recently, and I thought, here I am. This is the bit that people are talking about. This is about the rationing of public services. This is the upshot of where all those decisions, all those priorities actually come to bear. I'm sat here with my daughter. She's got a painful but not life-threatening problem with her elbow. And I thought, I actually thought, I'm pretty comfortable and confident I know what's going to happen in terms of when we're going to be seen. About 20 minutes after I'd been sat there, a man was wheeled in on a trolley who looked very, very ill indeed. And I fully expected him to be seen first, and he was, because I understood that, because health care in accident and emergency is rationed on the basis of need. It's not actually rationed on the basis of income. So whether you're wealthy or poor, that's not the same in all public services, but in accident and emergency, it's rationed on the basis of medical need. There's some further kind of subtleties in it, which is that the woman booking us in said, well, we always try and see infants first. So there was a lady sat next to us who looked like she had some non-threatening thing with her leg that was probably hurting but not life-threatening, and she'd been there before us, and I thought, well, I can't say for certain, but I'm pretty sure we're going to be seen before her, and we were. I was very, very aware of what the priorities were, and I knew how the resources were going to be rationed. And I think in libraries, library services where that has been pinned down, where that deal has been communicated with the public, and where the public are comfortable with it, things tend to go better when resources need to be rationed. On the other hand, in library services where they have to cut 15 or 20% of their budget, and they have 12 branches, and then a debate ensues about which branch to close, where there isn't that clarity of priorities, how did we decide that when the moment comes we're going to actually make these difficult rationing choices? When that hasn't been done, then you end up with all kinds of very difficult discussions. Should we close the library with the lowest footfall, because it's clearly not popular, but it might actually be in the area with the lowest literacy, and that's why it's not used? Or should we close the busy one in the wealthier area? What do we do? There's no right or wrong answer, but unless you've said, we believe we're going to give as much library to everybody, regardless of wealth, then you can go down the route of, we're going to have to tailor back spending on all of them. If you've said in advance, we're always going to spend on areas with low literacy and poverty before we spend on areas with high literacy and wealth, then it gives you license to do that, to make that choice. And in the same way that man got wheeled past me, and I thought I was expecting what was going to happen next, that he got prioritised, and I was comfortable with that. Those decisions are much easier when that deal has been cemented and re-cemented and remade with the public. And I think, which one's forwards? I think, Fiona talked about the very kind of origins of public libraries, but the very origins of rate-funded public libraries in England, the Warrington Perambulating Library, those of you who know this picture. Does anyone know this picture? Oh, it's a great picture, I love it. It was to take books, it was to take books to people who, by using those books, could help themselves. So, there was a very clear value set about the kind of the honest poor, which we might agree or disagree with today, but they were very clear what it was for. It was not to take books to people who loved reading. It was to take books who, through the reading of those books, could better themselves. The improvement and betterment of people in poor neighbourhoods. It was very clear. And I think in some library services that has been maintained, and in others it hasn't. And I think that's one of the big challenges. And very quickly, the second challenge is a kind of much grittier challenge. The decision-making structures, the authorising process within a local authority, and again, this kind of comes back to something that Fiona said, is complicated, difficult, quite subtle, and sometimes very frustrating. And you have to wear two heads. Is your job as a manager to look after the interests of the council or to look after the interests of the library? And those can be two different things. And when you think about the speed at which what people are expecting and what people respond to in libraries is changing, this is Willesden Green Library, which has set up this this amazing kind of pop-up space where they, as well as having the library, they use the spare space, a bit like kind of using the spare space for a community radio. They use spare space for this these kind of pop-up meetups for people locally who are trying to start their own business, so they can meet and do courses in kind of how to manage finance if there's only one of you and all that sort of thing. Everything's changing, and it's all everything is electronic as well, and people find out about this on Twitter. Things are changing so fast. If you've got to use a relatively complicated and kind of arcane decision-making process where actually the interests of the library aren't always the primary interest, that's not always the outcome that's being sought, what's best for libraries, then I think it makes things very difficult. And again, I think the library services we've come across who seem to have done well have managed to find answers, different answers in different cases to these questions. And I think I do know what the way forward is, but I'm not going to put that on the table now. I'm going to see if others are thinking what I'm thinking.